Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, our dear global audience. So nice to have you all joining us right from the first second already. And since our time is limited, then let's get started right away with some housekeeping already. And then after some housekeeping, I can then free the stage to our today's speakers as well. So today we'll be talking about personalized customer experience, and to have great thoughts shared and an enjoyable conversation today, then I will be your host today. I am Evely Kaasiku. I am responsible for marketing in Feedbackly, and today I have with us two great speakers, Kristian Stolt, COO from Feedbackly. Hello, Kristian. And we have also Mikko Määttä, Head of Marketing and Channel Sales from Frosmo. Good afternoon, gentlemen. And since our webinar team today is sending all greetings from Finland, then it would be actually very exciting to know where is our audience from. I know that we have some of our audience also from Finland, but as we always have a very global audience, it would be nice to know that where is everybody sending greetings from. So greetings from Finland, right to the chat. So the chat, where are you sending greetings from? And I can already send greetings back to Adam to South Africa. That's very, very exciting. Welcome, Adam. And please write her more. Where are you sending us greetings from? You can already practice a little bit the chat functionality here. Really nice. Great to see people joining all around the world. And this said, let's move on with a couple of housekeeping points. As mentioned, we have two speakers, so we have today also two presentations. And whenever you have questions about today's topic, then please write the questions to the chat that you already practiced a little bit, and we will take the questions after both presentations. And just like any other webinar, then also this webinar is recorded, so that you can also receive the recording afterward and share all this amazing conversation that we will have today with your colleagues as well. And these were quick housekeeping points, and I am excited to start freeing the stage now already to our first speaker. And our first speaker is Mikko Määttä, Head of Marketing and Channel Sales from Frosmo. So Mikko is a veteran B2B marketer and a former e-commerce operator. He staunchly believes that in business, especially online business, the best customer experience wins, and that the best way to deliver great CX is to serve each individual customer with journeys tailored to their particular needs and preferences. So, and now we will exactly start talking a little bit more about this very same topic. So, Mikko, let me stop sharing actually my slides, and please feel free to add some words about you, and we are excited to hear about the topic then more as well.
All right, thank you, Evely. Good afternoon, everyone. So Frosmo is a software tool, and we're a software developer, and it's a tool used for personalization of user experience, and it's used across a range of online services. Now, the title of this webinar mentions the word measure. So what Frosmo does on an e-commerce site, for example, is that it makes educated guesses regarding user preferences, and those guesses are very well educated at this point, as we've been at this for well over 10 years now. And then once it's made those educated guesses, it measures and monitors the outcomes and adjusts accordingly. So in my view, digital services are like leaking buckets. just as water leaks out from holes in a bucket, digital service providers lose customers over time. No matter how many new customers are acquired, if there's a high churn rate, the overall growth of the service might remain stagnant or even decline. Okay, I understand that some people find my metaphors a little bit naive. I like naive metaphors myself, but I also find this metaphor quite illuminating and practical in a lot of other cases. Now, of course, some digital services leak a lot less than others. Netflix and YouTube, they have incredible user retention, and TikTok is downright dangerous in its addictiveness, as at least anyone who has children knows. Now, the reasons behind great retention rates on these services are a myriad, of course, but one central factor driving their success is their very powerful personalization algorithms. Personalization is a critical success factor for almost any digital service these days. I'm sure you would agree. In fact, it's virtually impossible to succeed in any contested space without providing personalized content. One word about what personalization is in a nutshell. It's a set of technologies that enable digital services to tailor their offering to each individual users or consumers' personal preferences, and it does it in real time. So in other words, it's automation, it's artificial intelligence, and importantly, it's about user experience and driving better business outcomes. Personalization works in most, if not all, domains of digital services. E-commerce happens to be Frosmo's largest customer segment. In that domain, we help our customers increase their online revenue and profit. In practice, you would see substantial improvements in core e-commerce metrics, such as conversion rate and average order value, among others. If, on the other hand, you happen to run a content site, media site, such as a newspaper or maybe a magazine site, personalization creates business value for you by driving up the time that your readers spend on your site and also the rate at which they subscribe to your paid or premium offerings. And in these cases and more, pretty much all cases where personalization is involved, it helps turn casual visitors into loyal and long-term customers. So when Evely asked me to appear on this webinar, she requested that I offer my comments on a couple of interesting developments that we at Frosmo have observed lately. I chose two. The first is related to sustainability, which is a topic that I find a lot of people take an active interest in these days. And the second one concerns user experience on mobile devices as viewed from a personalization perspective. So let's get to it. If you think about your experience as a consumer in a contemporary web store, your choices are, if not dictated, at least guided by things like product recommendations, personalized search results, and even sometimes individualized discounts. And what if these tools were used to direct the consumer toward more sustainable choices? What if we had the ability to recognize the customer's ecological preferences and recommend to them products that are environmentally sound, recycled, or perhaps locally made? And many people would think that this is not yet perhaps a huge trend, but nevertheless, some of our customers are doing exactly things of this nature. They believe that eco-conscious consumers are an untapped market opportunity. And I believe some would go so far as to argue that the true e-commerce winners of the future are, at least in retail, are businesses that manage to combine world-class user experience with the values and practices of sustainable business and sustainability in general. Now, retailers and brand managers may sometimes hesitate to introduce products that are marketed as sustainable because, I don't know, prior research or hearsay identifies a discrepancy between what consumers say they intend to do or intend to purchase and what they actually do on retail sites or stores for that matter, so what they actually purchase. However, more recent research shows that despite this obvious gap, or assumed gap. Products that have sustainable claims on the package or feature sustainability things in their marketing do outperform growth of conventional products. Promoting and leading on from that, promoting sales of sustainable products is not, at least in our customers' experience and my personal opinion, it's not just an ethical choice for online retailers, it also offers very tangible commercial benefits by aligning with consumer values, staying ahead of regulation, ensuring long-term viability of your business model in general. Retailers can ensure both profitability and a positive brand image. And now for some practical examples. So making sustainable products easy to find is naturally a cool user experience for the segment that we're targeting in these cases. So this screen is from the web store of one of our customers called Scandinavian Outdoor. In this case, the little green triangle in the top left-hand corner of each product card indicates that the product is a sustainable product. Okay, I understand that from this picture it may seem like everything that they sell is a sustainable product, but that's only because the site had, at the time of me taking the screenshot, they had identified me as a person who is especially interested in these topics. So that's why. So it's a very simple example of supporting sustainability through personalization practices in e-commerce. And from a technical point of view, this is a very straightforward application of personalization. It's simple, effective. And I don't know this for a fact, but I can only assume that it's also good business because in these sort of scenarios, the consumer is well served and receives a good user experience. But also the merchant gets to sell products that typically have higher price points than regular products and maybe better margins. So seems like a win-win scenario, at least from my perspective. Here's another example, maybe a little bit more advanced. Here in this case, we go beyond labeling and actually adjust the content and even to some extent the structure of the product page. So in this case, I wasn't able to capture suitable screenshots from an actual store. So these are mock-ups, but in my opinion, they communicate the idea quite well. So in the picture on the left, this would be what a product page looks like by default. And in the right-hand side image, the personalization engine has made some modifications to the page, so it appears more attractive to the target customer or the target segment, a person who the algorithm has recognized as eco-friendly, so to speak. And if you pay close attention in the personalized version, there are elements that a bargain hunter type consumer might view as unwelcome distractions, such as a carbon footprint calculator. Whereas on the other hand, our eco-friendly consumer will likely look at this as being served with information that they are interested in. Okay, so this is a mock-up. In reality, I suppose that most retailers might hesitate to take the customization quite this far, as this could feel like an exaggeration, perhaps a little bit risky, but then again, who knows? Who knows before you actually try and test it, and then you see it for yourself. One more simple example is in this mock-up, how for these eco-minded consumers, we might want to offer a different set of delivery options that we would do with most other consumers. For example, offer carbon neutral shipping, compostable packaging, or a local pickup, just to name a few examples. All right, now, as amazing as personalization technology is, where it falls short a little perhaps is that it kind of lacks explanatory power. So it's a well-known fact that it increases both revenue and customer satisfaction for retailers, but it really struggles, and when I say it, I mean personalization technology, it struggles to explain why that happens. It runs a lot of tests and then keeps the best modifications, etc. But it's as I said, it lacks explanatory power. And I believe that to obtain that kind of insight, you might want to couple personalization with something like Feedbackly's tool, of which you will hear more in a moment, but first a couple of comments about mobile e-commerce as I promised. All right, so as everyone knows, the majority of online transactions these days take place on mobile devices, and that's why it's crucial for B2C e-commerce sites to understand and address the unique challenges faced by mobile users, particularly in the realm of product discovery. Among our customer base, Frosmo customer base, mobile traffic typically represents something in the ballpark of 70 to 80% of all site traffic. And most of the time, bounce rates on mobile devices are a lot higher than they are on desktops. So from that, if you do very simple math, you can conclude that there is a business case to be had there. Doing whatever it takes to maximize customer retention on mobile can really pay off. Here's what our research shows are some of the most important concerns expressed by e-commerce decision makers with respect to this particular topic. The limitations of the smartphone form factor require hard trade-offs, as everyone understands. Mobile users rely on their more small screens, restricts their browsing options, going through categories, etc. e-commerce sites. And another fairly obvious potential bottleneck is related to data entry. So typing on a mobile device is cumbersome and quite error-prone. Autocomplete and such facilities help to a certain extent, but finding the right product is still, most of the time, is not a great user experience. Okay, something funny happened to the title on the slide. It reads Automatic Personalized Product Collections. So all of the problems that I spoke about impact user experience in a negative way, of course. And just to finish off my section on this webinar, before handing over to Kristian, I would now like to very quickly discuss a concept that in my experience, not all retailers are familiar with, but is catching on very rapidly. And this is what this section is about. The concept has been called different things, different names, but perhaps the best label so far is automatic personalized product collections. Okay, that's a mouthful and doesn't quite roll off the tongue very easily, but anyway, let's stick with that. So what you see on this chart is how a typical personalization algorithm works, how it makes product recommendations. So the algorithm will show you a set of products taking into account both what is popular in general and what the given consumer's preferences are. And typically the recommended products are chosen from a single category like they are on this slide here, from outdoor shoes or something of that nature. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with this type of personalization and product recommendations. It works very effectively. But it does leave money on the table, we've discovered, and that's because of the issues that I discussed a minute ago. So we don't want to do that. So in my opinion, a logical next step for retailers that have squeezed the juice out of conventional personalization approaches might be something like this. So you would maybe like to enable your site to generate on the fly personalized collections or categories. Sometimes this is also referred to as dynamic categories. So how does that happen? So you would enable the algorithm to bring together products that have attributes that the given individual currently visiting the site is known to prefer. So it can be any attributes, but typically it's brand and category, like it is in this example from our customer site. So for example, Hoka women's running shoes. So that's a combination of brand and category. And when the person on the site would click on that button, it would show them, so the person like a personalized collection of products that meet those criteria. And it's quite simple, but very, very powerful. Now, I don't recommend that you replace traditional personalization facilities with this, but they complement each other very well. So this works very nicely along with traditional type of personalization technology. So especially for mobile users, enabling this in certain locations on your e-commerce site produces great reductions in bounce rate and therefore, as a result, drives up sales. Now, we also at Frosmo have a commercial name for this. We call it Smart Discovery, but since I'm not giving a product pitch this time around, just ignore that. Okay, so in this short presentation, I'm not able to cover all the use cases for this interesting piece of new technology that a lot of companies are beginning to take an interest in. We'll have to have that conversation separately, but I'll be more than pleased to have that. All right, so and what we've seen as a result of our customers implementing that sort of thing, that personalized product collections, they've had their sales increase by meaningful margins. Now, whether that sales increase is due to increased impulse purchase behavior, or is it because we're helping people find things easier, especially on mobile, it's very hard for us to tell from our data. So we know it works. We don't quite that well know why it works, but perhaps that's exactly where Feedbackly's capabilities come to the rescue. So let's see what they have to say. And with that, I thank you, everyone, and I would like to hand this over to Kristian.
Thank you so much, Mikko. It was very interesting, and you already did a really good bridge to Kristian's topic as well. So it's now interesting to move forward with how customer feedback can be used in personalization as well. And before I free the stage, Kristian, to you, then a couple of words about you also, so the audience knows who is giving those great tips now. So Kristian, as I mentioned, is the COO at Feedbackly. And Kristian is also one of the head coaches of the CX Academy. Kristian and his team have helped many industry leaders across the world succeed with their CX programs and become CX front runners. And among the many, they have helped Stockmann, the City of Helsinki, Merck, Innovasport, the Australian government, Panregia, and so on and so on. So, and what comes to Feedbackly, then maybe a couple of words about Feedbackly as well. As it has been mentioned, also a little bit, then Feedbackly is a feedback customer feedback software. You can create surveys, launch them on any channel you can imagine, and specifically, actually, Feedbackly is focusing and specializing in measuring emotional experience with the help of emotional value index. That's also exciting topic. But this said, I am excited to free the stage to Kristian. So Kristian, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Evely, and thanks, Mikko, as well. Really interesting insights on the personalization and the sustainability aspect in your part as well. So essentially, Mikko kind of like gave out already a lot of what my part will be about, and it's essentially the why, trying to understand the reasoning why people act or behave in a certain way, and what kind of tools can be used in order to enrich that understanding as well, because a lot of these things complement each other, hence also the joint webinar with Frosmo. I've now divided my own part into 3 different pieces, and starting off with the customer journey approach, which of course is one key element. If you want to understand your customers online in the e-com environment, you need to understand the journey as well. Second part will be a bit of a highlighting what types of things to collect. Essentially, it's a matter of generating the data so you can take those actions, and whom actually to direct your actions to, and what examples there might be of said actions is essentially part number 3. So think of this a bit like what Mikko just said, but this essentially is the fuel that will lead to what Frosmo and Mikko and everyone is doing in order to personalize experience, increase sales, and customer retention as well. So when we kick things off, of course, customer journeys are a concept that probably everyone joining this webinar are somewhat familiar with. Usually we talk about omni-channel customer experience, omni-channel journeys, but like with everything, e-com has its journey of its own as well. So of course you want to understand the different stages of the journey in order to be able to attract new customers, meaning increase conversion, but also retain and help those customers coming back. A lot of that retain part is what Mikko was also talking about just now. And like Evely said in the introduction, what we do at Feedbackly is, of course, the emotional understanding, and that we can offer a way to understand the customer emotions throughout the journey, because those emotions are pretty much the most personal thing each of us has as persons and consumers. So why not utilize that to everyone's advantage to understand more about the customer and also generate more personalization based on behavior, etc. So when we think about that okay, what is needed? What are the building blocks or the fuel to actually get started with some of the personalization tasks or development processes that you might have in mind already? You kind of like need different ingredients to this. And what Mikko also, because it wasn't a product pitch, but what Frosmo, of course, is basing a lot of their value on is the contextual data. Essentially, what has happened? What is the previous behavior? How much do we know about the customer profile in order for us to personalize the experience? But what we do then at Feedbackly to kind of like complement that contextual data, that what part of things, is that at Feedbackly, we aim to answer on the why. And that's what you do with the CX data. So in order to get to that operational contextual data, whatever you want to call it, you need to get the reasoning behind it as well. And I kind of like wanted to bring out here today as well a very kind of like standard approach to what CX data actually consists of, because, you know, terminology wise, there's always a bit of confusion on what that actually is. But in this particular topic, we're now talking about that structured, standardized data that usually is called feedback. And what you actually need in order to start building your personalization development is, of course, that structured, standardized data, utilizing the correct KPIs to your own industry, to your own segments. For instance, emotional value index, which of course we think is the best. Our customers that are using it think it's the best because that's what you use for personalization. Then, of course, more tactical KPIs like customer effort score and customer satisfaction. But then also to really get to the granular level is to have the open feedback data, because that's where you can kind of like start building a bit more on the profiles of specific people. I will talk about that in the segmentation part in just a second. But one big thing, of course, is that when you're kind of like, you're basically building profiles based on data, so you can recommend the actions to be taken in a personalized way. But what we here in Europe understand pretty well, thanks to GDPR, is of course, you know, the privacy policies, the personal data regulation, because of course you would like to know as much as possible about your visitors, your customers, but there's of course the legislation you need to keep in mind. You know, what can you collect? What do you need to tell the customer as well? How do you use the data, etc. But usually companies have very tight frameworks on how and what and when. So, you know, inside that framework, there's still a lot of opportunities to actually generate those personalized campaigns or landing pages or whatnot, depending on your actions, of course. So what do you do with the data then? This is a very, very common question, if not daily, then on a weekly basis when we talk about, okay, I want to start taking actions. I want to start personalizing the experience because I believe, and we believe, of course, as well, that increased personalization is the future. You can't really, do business well without that, especially in e-com, like Mikko also mentioned here. But the biggest problem is usually that people tend to think that you need to go very, very hyper personal. You need to go to very into detail to understand and build a profile of each individual. So each individual customer, essentially. As with everything, this is kind of like jumping to the deep end, and it usually leads to more problems than actual possibilities and opportunities. So what we always recommend is that, and all in all frameworks and theory, if you read up on segmentation, is that start off with building bigger customer segments, because it's much easier to handle it, especially if you have a big customer base. The three most common categories to essentially segment customers or individuals on are the demographic one. This is the one we are all familiar with. It's basically age, gender, location, etc. Then we have the behavioral one, and this has to do more with, how does the customer move in our e-com store? What kind of products are they looking into? What kind of customer journey have we built to them? A bit what Mikko was talking about here, understanding the behavioral aspect as well when you're inside an e-com store. And then the third one, which I wouldn't say it's new, but it's something that is growing, but a lot of brands are not thinking about it too much yet, is the psychographic one. And I'm super happy that Mikko brought up the theme of sustainability, because psychographic is a good example, or sorry, sustainability is a good example of psychographic segmentation. It has to do with things that, your own values, for instance, or the customer's values. It has to do with behavior or what they like to do, how they identify themselves as individuals. And it's a type of thing that is basically not depending on how old you are, what gender you are, where you're located, or how you behave in a certain environment. It's just your personal preferences on a lot of things. If you want to understand or read up on great customer segmentation, have a look at what Netflix is doing. Mikko also mentioned Netflix, and actually during his part of the speech, I got an in-app notification from Netflix about recommendations of what to watch next. They do it super well. It's also a bit scary in a sense, but that's a good use case to read up on. So okay, you have your data, you have your segments. What are you actually doing with that? Of course, you want to do something. You want to generate the what's next type of situation. And this is where a lot of times organizations tend to get a bit stuck, partially due to the fact that they want to hyper-personalize everything, and then they don't essentially have a playbook for all the different scenarios that might play out. But I wanted to bring up a couple of very straightforward and I wouldn't say they're simple, but they're easily understandable use cases on kind of like how you use that data in order to personalize the actions that happens next. So we have our data, we have the CX data, meaning the feedback on what this person has given. You have the contextual data, what they have purchased or how many times they purchased in the last 6 months. It can be essentially anything. And of course, based on this, you want to build an action on what could be a logical follow-up. In this particular example that we're looking at right now, it might be that, they have had their emotion during the purchase has been joy or enthusiasm, and they purchased in a specific product category, and your action could be, hey, let's invite them to give us a review. And that review would then, of course, lead to some follow-up action after that. So of course, this is how you slowly start to building these kind of playbooks, and at the end of the day, your goal is to increase revenue or increase retention or product suggestions, like Mikko and Frosmo, for instance. So it's not rocket science if you don't overcomplicate it in the beginning. And then if we look at the same thing from kind of like a more of a negative starting point, so same thing, you kind of like have that destroying emotion. With emotional value index, we talk about clusters and a destroying cluster. So let's say a customer is irritated based on the feedback, but they have kind of like a high value purchase amount and repeat purchase rate. So of course it's a valuable customer for you. Your action could be, in this case, that discount coupon for the next purchase in a specific category or something else that you want to get them, keep having them coming back. And of course, at the end of the day, the goal is as similar as with positive experiences. You want to improve the retention, decrease churn, and increase revenue, or hold on to what you already have gotten up to that point. So from a CX point of view, the personalization process doesn't have to be too complicated. You just need the right ingredients to start testing it out. And it's a combination of that contextual data, CX data, proper segmentation, after which you're able to build your action taking place after that. And of course, aim to automate all of these and keep customers coming back to the personalized landing pages and environments that Mikko and the team is building, for instance. So that's kind of like how the whole process goes. And I'll end my part here. So thank you at this point. Back to you, Evely.
Thank you, Kristian. Another very, very interesting presentation indeed. Welcome back also, Mikko, as we'll start with the Q&A in just a second. Before we jump to Q&A, then please, our dear audience, feel free to write any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments that you have in mind also to the chat, so that it's interesting to take them from there. While you're thinking about the questions, then Mikko already mentioned also that it's possible, of course, to meet and learn more about the topics. Now jumped up a pop-up that you can click and book a meeting. Please write to the meeting description, or there's an open field for writing what topics you would like to cover. Then we can find you the best person to meet as well, either from Frosmo or Feedbackly, for example. So definitely you can grab a chance to meet and learn more about these topics as well. But let's move on then with the Q&A. And thank you, Roger, for a great question. I will take this also just in a minute. And actually, before this, I think it's good to start off this conversation right now with a simple question: that what data can be used for personalization? Is it just like any data that you can come up with can be used for personalization, or are there any lines and borders that should be kept in mind? And Mikko, maybe you can start with giving your thoughts to this question.
Okay, well, yeah, thanks. That's a broad question. The really short answer is that almost anything can be used. In our case, what we typically use is behavioral data. So if we're talking about e-commerce, so our algorithms will observe what sort of topics or products or even colors or brands or whatever there might be, whatever that user or visitor consumer is interested in. So that's one sort of input. And then I think, like Kristian alluded to, also the stage of the buyer journey. So we will pick up on whether that person is in the browsing phase or is actually considering a purchase. So that type of questions also. And then almost anything like geolocation, and also through integrations, we could deal with anything. For example, in one customer case, We integrate with the weather service, so we take weather data into account when making personalization
Exciting.
decision on the fly. So it's really quite flexible.
All right. Is it so that
Maybe I'll answer a question that was not asked. So what we do not do is take any personally identifiable information. So we will never know who the person is. So we only know about their preferences.
very good, very good. And Christian, what about the CX part and actually also, please, first thoughts, and please remember to unmute yourself. Yeah, good.
Yes, I did. Thanks. Yeah. Well, the basic philosophy is also at Feedbackly the same, that we do not collect any personal information. Collecting feedback is always based on approval from the user. And I'm gonna, Roger, answer your question at the same time here as well. So kind of like, how do you solicit that feedback? What we do with our customers is that we want to optimize that. When are we triggering the survey to be shown inside the e-com site as a pop-up, as a widget, or to be sent out, for instance, after they purchased something as email or SMS later on. So we'll always try to send it as soon as they've taken a specific action, because then you get the as real-time feedback as possible. And that's what our tool essentially does. We try to optimize every part of the customer journey so we can utilize it with the best user experience and get the best feedback and meet the customer where they are when you want to get that feedback. But you kind of like, you don't want to ask them 15 questions once. You'd rather have, shorter, straight to the point surveys in different parts of the stages, and then you sample it. So you don't ask the same person maybe everything. You can build segmentation without asking same people all the stuff in all the different stages, for instance.
For example, 3 to 5 questions in a survey, and there you go.
Yeah, good rule of thumb usually. Yeah, that's the thing. But other than that, legally we have restrictions. Ethically, brands have restrictions. But other than that, it's essentially about finding those data points that really helps you generate those segments and give you value on what to do next. But there are otherwise no limitations.
Yeah, probably then should rather start thinking from the business perspective. What are your business goals, and come down from there, right?
Yeah.
Good. Adam, as a very interesting question, a long question here, so I will try to read it out, and let's try to discuss it then more. So I hold a diploma in customer experience and always find it challenging to integrate a more sophisticated CX strategy into our business, especially as we currently have a rather basic CX journey in place. I think this is very relevant to very, very many businesses. So definitely very, very good. My role involves managing a rewards and recognition program where employees use points as currency to redeem digital vouchers instead of physical products. And the question is, how can I personalize this rewards system to enhance the overall customer experience for our employees? So it needs a...
Do you, Mikko, have something on your mind?
You're cutting off right now, a little bit freezing. Yeah, Mikko, if you have anything too much open, any other windows that you can close, I think this would help with the connection right now. You're a little bit freezing, and also if you can, yeah, I can help you with turning off the camera, but give us a sign if you are still there. Okay, but Christian, maybe we can then start with you while Mikko is joining us again. So how to personalize the reward system that has actually points as currency to redeem digital vouchers instead of physical products.
Yeah, it kind of like, of course, not knowing all the background and the business too well. Of course, it's a matter here. Is it essentially kind of like one product? Because if it's one particular digital voucher, then of course it's different because you don't have a category to personalize based on. But to be honest, it a bit depends on the selection that you are using. You know, for instance, okay, one voucher, but for X amount of different purposes, then essentially you would have a broader product selection, and then it would be easier to start personalizing based on segmentation and things like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But Mikko, do you have anything to add to this question? Or actually, Adam, I think we can, since it needs a little bit more thinking, we can even give you an answer over email personally later. That could be perhaps even good and more useful for you. But Mikko, any thoughts to add to this right now before we move on to the next questions?
I don't think I really have. I don't think I have anything to add to that. It's slightly outside of my scope of expertise, regrettably, but it's an interesting question nevertheless.
Yes, very good. Then Adida has asked that how do we balance the personalized customer journey without spooking them that we know or show too much? I think this is a question that actually everybody has in mind. Like Kristian, you mentioned also your experience with Netflix. We all know that all the businesses are doing personalization and they have a lot of data about us, but we don't necessarily want to know too much about it, right? So how to know the line? Mikko.
In my experience, this is not an issue in practice at all. So at least as far as e-commerce sites are concerned. So when you ask people, they might say that they find something like personalization a little bit spooky, but in practice, everyone seems to appreciate it. And so I don't know, Adia, if this sounds like an arrogant answer, but I don't think this is a big issue in practice, at least for e-commerce. Maybe there are other scenarios where it is more delicate. Do you have something in mind, Kristian?
No, not really. It's a scary thought for sure. Well, basically what Mikko just said. So haven't seen, but if we will, let's have a webinar about it, that what to do when you spook with your personalization. Then we can get back to that topic.
Yeah.
It's Halloween time, so maybe spooky question.
Yeah, right. And of course, when you measure customer experience and run surveys, ask feedback, then you will definitely get feedback about this as well, and you will learn if it's an issue or not. Then Sean has a question that considering the customer journey, what would be the best way to run CX surveys? Is it better to run the surveys after each purchase or rely more on generalized surveys, such as NPS, for example? So Kristian, please, what are your thoughts about that?
I would say that it's both, but in the terms of personalization, I would rather go for the more dynamic CX data collection, more dynamic surveys, meaning after each purchase, because we all know that our preferences might change. They change overnight or in a week or something like that. Sustainability is again a great example. So I would rather measure more often in order to be able to flexibly update segmentation or actions based on that than have it too generalized. Because if you generalize it too much, then of course it's harder to build those actions at the end, because then you won't have clear segments either. But yeah, so more dynamic, I would say. The world is moving faster these days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good, very good. And we have talked a lot about the data and a little bit about the spookiness of it as well. And GDPR is something that we always have in mind as well, as spooky as it is or not. So how to ensure that the personalization actually meets the GDPR rules as well, because we want to go personalized, but there is a line. We cannot go too far with it either, so also to meet the GDPR rules. So what's the rule of thumb or your pro tips to actually ensure that GDPR rules are also met? Mikko, please.
All right, so as I said earlier, we never collect personally identifiable information in the first place. The technology per se is fully GDPR compliant, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to the business, our customers' own requirements. So most of our customers do want to ensure that the way that Frosmo or any other piece of technology is set up is fully GDPR compliant, and that's what usually happens. But at the end of the day, it's a business decision rather than a technology decision.
Mm-hmm. Very good answer. And Kristian, anything to add to this?
No, just when that's also the hyper personalization I mentioned, that is a common pitfall, especially in the beginning. If and when there are concerns, maybe not from a legal point of view, but also what was mentioned earlier about the spookiness of knowing too much. Building segments, building bigger audiences also enables you to keep it not as personal, but personal enough. It's hard to kind of like put a finger on it, but at the same time, for instance, a lot of times personalization is about you might be interested in, instead of based on your previous purchases, this is what we offer to you. So it's a bit of kind of like understanding that different, and of course it will not always go right. You will not always personalize whatever you're doing 100% correctly, but that's when you iterate it and optimize on the fly. But that's about it.
Very good. And we are now running out of questions as well. And so the last question that I will ask from both of you. So what are the first steps now that a business, or if I would like to get started with personalization or do it right, what are the first steps that I should take, or the first things I should evaluate, or the first steps, 3 steps, for example? Mikko, please.
Well, yeah, very, very practical first step would be to hit that book a meeting button in the corner of the screen and get the conversation going, and then we can, in a joint effort, evaluate if something like Frosmo or Feedbackly is a good match for your business. Whether maybe you have something like product recommendations already in place, and what Frosmo does is also product recommendations, but so much more. So we could then discuss if we can add additional value on top of your current tech stack. So that would be it. And then we make the actual getting started with our solution really easy by providing a 30-day free trial, during which most customers, almost every customer, already sees a positive outcome. So increased sales. So in practice, that's quite straightforward.
All right, great tips. Kristian, your final tips. What could be the steps that our audience could take now next?
Yeah, book a meeting, 1, as Mikko said. 2, check your CX program, evaluate where you are. And 3, go through what kind of data do you have at your disposal. It's essentially of building a starting point. That where are you right now? Because that's, if you have high quality data that you've been collecting, or you're able to attain, and you have the software to do something about it, good, then it's a matter of jumping into segmentation and actions. But if you have poor data or no data at all, that's where you need to get started. That's why you need a CX program as well.
Mm-hmm. Very good tips, and I think with these tips we can then sum up this webinar as well. Thank you so much for amazing conversation and great presentations, Mikko and Kristian, and thank you our audience for the interesting questions and for listening as well today here. And thank you, everybody. Until next time. And I will send slides and recording also over email within the next couple of days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.